on this computer. All right. Cool.
Hello, everybody.
What's going on?
What's up, Michael? What's up, Marty?
Hey, guys. Hey, Nathan.
What's up?
And then you don't know that last guy. You've never met him before.
I heard this guy's a crappy speaker.
All right,
What's
so
up?
I'm the only guy who doesn't know Nathan.
I don't know, Marty. Have you met
See you guys
Nathan?
later.
I don't think I've met Marty. When did we meet Marty?
We met at Ramshackles
What is
when you came to visit us.
What's Ramshackles?
Oh,
When you
that
came
doesn't
to-
sound ramshackles.
when you were on our podcast, you had lunch with us.
Right. Okay. All right.
Marty got it.
That makes sense. What's
You got
going
another
on?
one. I added Zach in.
Zach's with us. Cool.
Zach's here.
He said John will not be able to make it.
No?
Recently
What about
just
Rich?
moved to reverse cash discount.
Have not heard from Rich.
When
What's up, Zach?
they complete their service, they run the card for the charge.
What's going on,
I
Zach?
know the
What's up?
surcharge for the sake of this conversation is added.
All right.
They go
Hey,
back
Mike,
in
I'm going to mute you since I can hear Patty in the
later
background.
part of the
All right.
day.
Oh, okay. I'll mute myself.
All right, cool. All right. We're going to go ahead and kick it off. This is recording, everybody. So this is Nathan Hirsch. Nathan has built he built an 8-figure, right? Freelance organization platform called Freeeup. He recently exited out of that, 3-4 months ago, something like that?
Yeah, end of last year.
In the last year. And now he is building a new organization called outsourceschool.com. And he's training on how to use VAs and freelancers, how to onboard them, how to train them effectively, how to interact, how to build SOPs, things of that nature. But today, I've really asked him to kind of cover one specific topic, and that is about using podcasts for marketing, and not, building your own podcast, but about actually getting onto podcasts, because that is just a huge area of expertise for him. That is really how he built the brand exposure for Freeeup. And I believe you're continuing to do that for Outsource School as well. So that, and a lot of organic social media, so in Facebook groups and things of that nature. Those are the two primary ways that you would say that you marketed Freeeup prior. Is that correct, Nathan? Yeah.
So I actually have a 5-part organic playbook, and I'll kind of give the overview of each one, but those are 2 of them. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Sweet. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let Nathan really take over today. But yeah, he's got a lot of useful and valuable information for you guys. And thank you so much for being here, Nathan.
No, of course. It's always fun. I love just talking about organic marketing because I feel like no one talks about this stuff. Everyone's so obsessed with the Facebook ads and all the other stuff going on. And all those things are great, but they're all complementary to the organic piece. And I mean, we really, with Freeeup, and I was an Amazon seller before that. I don't think we need to go too deep into my story, but I sold on Amazon. I scaled that business using VAs. I didn't like the other platforms, the Upworks, the Fiverr, so I built my own platform, Freeeup. And when I started Freeeup, I had no idea how to market. I didn't even know what SEO was, because I came from the Amazon space where you just didn't have to do that. You paid Amazon their 15%, they got all the customers, and that was that. So all this stuff, I really just learned from doing it for a few years, a lot of trial and error, and seeing what everyone else was doing and trying to kind of stay away from what everyone else was doing and come up with my own system, my own process for stuff. And this same organic playbook that I'll go over in depth and then I'll dive into, or I'll go over an overview and then I'll dive into podcasts, is the same playbook we use to grow Freeeup from a $5,000 investment to $1 million to $5 million to $9 million to $12 million and then get acquired. It's the same playbook we're using on my new venture from Outsource School. Essentially, instead of spending 2 years figuring out the playbook, we're trying to hire people and implement all this stuff in like 6 months or less. And it's the same playbook that we teach people how to do in Outsource School. We teach people the basics of interviewing, onboarding, training, managing, but then we also teach people how to use VAs for operations and for marketing. And for the marketing side, it's the organic playbook that I'm about to go over. So this is all stuff that I do, and I'm happy to answer any questions I have. I truly believe that you can apply it no matter what business you're in, whether you're selling a physical product or you're a service business, or you're a marketplace like we were. I even see Amazon sellers like doing this. So I could have even done this way back in the day. So it all starts off with the affiliate program, the referral program. That's like the baseline for everything. One of the better decisions we made at Freeeup back in the day was create a program where any client you refer, you get 50 cents for every hour that we bill to that client forever. And not only was that clear on the website, but we said it at the end of every single conversation. And once I hired people to do phone calls, at the end of every call, it was, oh, by the way, we have this great affiliate program. I came up with 4 sentences that were clear, that everyone memorized, and you're just spreading the word consistently over time, and you hopefully get lots of referrals. I remember people would be like, oh, I heard about you in a conference in China, and I'd never even been to China. So that's kind of the baseline for everything. And then off of that, you have going on podcasts, which I go on a podcast once a day. I used to go on multiple ones every day. That got a little bit crazy, so I toned it down. But I do recommend that if you're not going on a podcast a week, that you start doing that. It's great for your brand. I'll dive into kind of the benefits of that, but podcast is just one of them. The next thing is partnerships. You guys all have partnerships with each other, so I know you understand this, but partnering in really content partnerships is what I'm talking about. Finding other people in your space that have the same target audience that don't offer the same services that you do. So with Freeeup, we went after Amazon sellers to start because I came from the Amazon space. So we went after Amazon software companies, Helium 10, Seller Labs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but we said, hey, you guys don't offer VAs. We don't offer Amazon software. Let's set it up so that every 6 months we do some kind of content swap together. It could be an email blast where they promote us, we promote them. Could be a guest blog post, could be a webinar, a podcast, a YouTube video. At some point we did a VIP, like co-sponsored events. That's like the high level, but you can start off small. And you can, of course, have a VA organize or anyone on your team organize these and make it easy for your partners. So you reach out to them every 6 months and say, hey, what do you want to do together? And over time, we built out 200 plus partnerships of people that are just constantly promoting us every single quarter, which is a fantastic way to get leads and also just show that you work with all the top people in your space. Off of that, Mike mentioned content, just putting out content consistently. And honestly, people ask me like, oh, like, how do you get all this engagement with content? I write out my posts every single Sunday. I post them on social media 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, night. The ones that don't get engagement, I just delete before anyone sees them and I just replace them with something else. And you do trial and error until you kind of figure it out. It's the consistency that matters. And all these kind of go into each other, right? You're forming partnerships and that kind of goes with the content because you're doing content swaps. The affiliate program might lead to you getting on a podcast for someone to promote you and use their affiliate link. Everything I talk about kind of go hand in hand together, but you kind of build out this organic playbook that you make little efforts over time to greatly expand your business. The next thing is networking calls. So I'm a big proponent of networking with other entrepreneurs. First thing I do every morning is reach out to 3 new entrepreneurs. I try to make it relevant, not just random people I find on Facebook, people that are in my space, people that would ideally make good partners or have a good podcast. Again, they all kind of come together. And I'm not selling them. I'm not pitching them. I'm trying to get on the phone with them and learn their story, tell them more about me and what I do, and see if there's any way to work together. And I always tell them, like, if there is a great way to work together, fantastic. If not, it's always good meeting other people in your space. And over time, you're going to look back 2 years later and say, wow, I met a lot of people. My network's grown. I know a lot of people in the space. And it's also going to lead to other opportunities like the partnerships, like the podcasts. Next is influencers, which is a little bit harder, but contacting influencers to get them to promote your service, promote your brand, finding people that are coaches, people that have Facebook groups, could be podcasts, could be just people with a large Instagram following, reaching out to them, building trust, building that relationship. And that's kind of the higher level version. So that's really my organic playbook. And again, they all kind of go together, and I'll answer any questions before I kind of dive into the podcast part of it.
So those networking calls, how are you generally doing that outreach? Is that mostly a Facebook type message that you do, or is that an email, phone call? What is your primary go-to?
I usually use email or an Instagram. Great banned by LinkedIn messages, so kind of have a guard up right there. Those get lost as well. So my strategy for reaching out to people for networking calls is I'll just say, hey, my name's Nathan, I own Freeeup, or my name's Nathan, I own Outsource School, or sorry, would love to connect, I own XYZ. And people's responses to that, most entrepreneurs are super nice, like, hey, great to connect. How's your day going? Other people will say, like, what is Freeeup or what is Outsource School? And you should have a blurb, like 3 or 4 sentences, and post that in and say, hey, thanks for your response. Would love to set up a networking call. And some people ask like what a networking call is. And you have to say something along the lines of, hey, no agenda, would love to learn more about you. I love connecting with different entrepreneurs, tell you more about me. And if there's some way to help each other, great. If not, it's always good just meeting other entrepreneurs. So that's kind of having like a canned response that you can just consistently use over and over again, and tweaking it over time is key.
Excellent. All right. Any questions from you guys?
How do you feel the conversion rate is on partnerships? I feel like I've really tried to push partnerships a little more this year than before, but I feel like a lot of times when I build partnerships, it usually tends to start becoming one-sided, or either one-sided or they don't see your value. But for instance, if I was selling a $20,000 package and they were also selling a $20,000 package, I would sell their services that way, because not really sell, but promote the engagement to them. But then when they come to me for something, they still want it cheap, and I feel like that's how all partnerships have gone for me so far.
So are your partnerships more like white label partnerships, or are we talking content partnerships?
No, not my white label. That's a little different partnerships. I'm talking more so partnerships where they could still make what they make. So for instance, I'm in the athletic realm. I just signed a partnership with, similar to what you said, with an NFL player who just does video production, and I don't really do video production, and another NFL player who does business development, and I don't do business development. So I partnered with them, but then it seems like it's always one-sided. I'm always sending them lead. I mean, I don't care. If I'm not going to be able to do work for someone, I'll send them to somebody else. So I'll send them stuff. Either I won't get anything back, or they'll be like, oh, I need your services. My client wants your services for $200. And I'm like, the whole point of the partnership is I don't feel like I need to deal with that kind of crap. If that makes sense.
So what you're talking about is a little bit more in terms of the affiliate and the referral partnership, where you have people that refer you to them and vice versa.
Exactly.
What I would do is I would set it up more as a content partnership, where you're like, hey, if we're going to partner, I'll make it easier for you. I'll organize it on my end. Every 6 months, I'm going to reach out to you and we're going to agree to do something together. And if you're like, hey, I'm too busy, that's fine. We can push it back a quarter. If it's going well and you want to do 2 things in 1 quarter, that's fine too. But you're holding them to, hey, this quarter, this is what we're doing. You're going to write a guest blog post for my blog. I'm going to do vice versa. I'm going to give you an email template to send out to your community. You're going to give one to send out to me, to my community. So it's very much the same thing, because you're controlling what that is. It's not like, oh, I'm going to keep sending people your way and vice versa. It's more of a like down to get it done, like get them to actually do something that'll stay there, that's more evergreen too. So if you get a guest blog post on their blog, assuming they have a blog, that's a backlink that helps your SEO. That's more evergreen. People will visit that blog. Same thing if you do a video for their YouTube channel. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And they can still refer people to you, but that I wouldn't just count on only that being the way that you get people,
Okay.
Cool. Hope that was helpful.
It was.
Anybody else? By the way, welcome, Rich.
I'll keep going with the podcast. So to me, a lot of people do the podcast backwards. I always cringe when people like, I was just on a podcast the other day, and he had a podcast that he'd been running for like a year, and it was like really good ranking, but he had like no business behind the podcast. And in my mind, that's like totally backwards. It's like you create a business and then you use the podcast to drive traffic to your business. And a lot of people are starting their own podcasts really too early. Like, in my opinion, like when we started a podcast for Freeeup, we started it in year 4. Like, you don't have to, maybe you wait like a year or 2, but the podcast shouldn't be the first thing that you create. And you should be going on podcasts long before you start your own podcast in most situations. There's exceptions to every rule. Every business is a little bit different. And you guys might be listening and your business is down the line and you should have started a podcast a year ago, but I'm talking more in general and what I've seen. So going on podcasts has a lot of benefits. And a lot of people that go on podcasts, they show up, they do the interview, they leave, and that's like half the battle. A lot of the people that are doing podcasts and doing podcasts the right way, they're bigger players in their industry. They know other people in the industry. They know other podcasts in their industry. So if you're going on podcasts, make sure that you show up a little bit early and use that time to chat with the host. You could also do it after the podcast. Get to know them, very similar to like what you would do in a networking call. It doesn't have to be crazy long, but know what their business is. See if you can help them in any way. One thing I'll do, because a lot of podcast hosts go on other podcasts, is I'll give them a list of past podcasts I've been on. And right there, that's like a quick value add. It takes 2 seconds of my time. I don't care if they have my podcast list, and they feel like I added a ton of value to them. So starting off, getting that networking call on the same page. Then the podcast has other benefits. Not only if you do the research correctly, and I'm a big proponent of having a VA do the research and teaching them how to find podcasts. If you do it correctly, you're going to find podcasts that are in your target space, that are probably a little bit more niche, that have your target audience. And you want to avoid podcasts that are newer. You want to avoid podcasts. A big red flag to me is if someone like has a real job and is doing a podcast like at night or on weekends or stuff like that. And you can come up with your own criteria, but forming criteria for a VA to search podcasts and make sure that they're actually a good fit for you. Now, the number of downloads, not a great teller for whether the podcast is going to be good for you. I've been on huge podcasts that resulted in nothing, and I've been on smaller podcasts that were my ideal target client that resulted in a lot of great clients. So that's not the end all be all, but you don't want to be someone's like third podcast. The average podcast, I think, makes it to like 10 episodes before they stop. You want podcasts that have been out there 50, 100, 150 episodes, that have a lot of reviews, that have good ratings, that you respect the host and stuff like that. Now, I mentioned the networking effect is real, and that's a snowballing effect where once you get on a podcast, you can use that to leverage to get on bigger podcasts. You can use it for speaking opportunities. You can use it to promote your brand. You can put in your LinkedIn profile. It kind of builds you as a brand ambassador in your space. Getting in front of thousands of people is fantastic. It's probably better than doing all those sales calls, and also remember that's evergreen. A lot of people, they'll put it on their YouTube channel, they'll put it on their website. You get a backlink on some really great websites. That's great for SEO. And a lot of times at the end of the show, I recommend asking the host what you can do to help them if you haven't already, but they'll ask you what they can do to help you. And that's your opportunity to get them to sign up as an affiliate if they want to. Some do, some don't. Remember, the affiliate program is kind of the baseline for everything. It's also an opportunity to say, hey, I go on podcasts. I'd love any referrals to other podcast guests that you know. And that's kind of a good thing there to kind of, again, that snowball effect. So that's kind of my overall mentality of like the benefits of going on podcasts and the good overall approach. I can talk a little bit more about what to do when you're actually on the podcast in a minute, but is there any questions on like the benefits or the before and the afters?
I'm sorry, you said you were going to get to what later on?
I can go into like what to expect when you're actually like on the podcast.
Well, that's what my question was going to be about. Does anybody else have a question about anything else before I ask? Okay.
Fire away.
So question is, how do you protect yourself? And what I mean is, there's going to end up being a question you don't have an answer for and you're fumbling. How do you protect yourself, and can you protect yourself?
Yeah. So the experienced podcaster in me, and I didn't do this early on, I pretty much tell people like what's off limits up front. And a lot of good hosts will ask. For me, I really only have one thing off limit, and that's how much I sold Freeeup for, only because I'm just not legally allowed to say it. So instead of having them ask me and me being like, sorry, I can't do it, I just let them know ahead of time, like everything else is fair game. That's fine. The other thing to keep in mind, and one of the reasons I like podcasts, so I do a lot of Facebook Lives too, and Facebook Lives are great with groups. Problem with Facebook Lives is they're live, right? They don't get edited. The cool thing about podcasts is they get edited, and 9 out of 10 hosts, if you stumble along a question, you can be like, hey, can we redo that? Or hey, can we skip that question or whatever it is? And they'll edit that out. The average host is trying to make you look good. It's not good for them if they ask a question and you fumble around with it and they display that to their people. So it's usually a non-issue. I also like to create like a like the common questions. I make it super easy for the host. I'm going to see if I can pull it up real quick, and I'll throw it into Slack. It used to be a lot longer. Now I kind of just broke it down. And all my stuff is around VAs. So I just threw that into Zoom. So whenever I go on a podcast, my VA will actually send them like topics to talk about, and depending on what it is. So I give them a heads up on what questions are good. Occasionally they'll add like other questions. I remember on Mixergy, I don't know if you have listened to him with Andrew Warner, very similar to Entrepreneur on Fire. Like they go hard at you, like they challenge you everything you say. So those are ones maybe you wait until you have a little bit more experience. I personally don't do this, but you can do this if you're preparing for your first podcast. I just go on a lot of podcasts. So for me to listen to every episode before I go on the podcast is the same reason. It's just crazy. It would take up too much of my time. The same reason I don't want to do like pre-calls with every single podcast I get invited on. I would just end up with twice as much commitment as I already have. But if you're curious on what the podcast is going to be, go listen to one or two of their past episodes. They don't really switch the questions around besides the stuff that's very specific to your business. And most of them follow the same structure of like, tell a little bit about your story. Then they go into like some kind of adversity, some kind of challenge you have. And this is something you want to be there. You don't want to come across as someone who's just like gone straight up and never had anything bad happen to you. Like people can't relate to that. So you should be ready with some kind of failure story, some kind of lesson story in there. Then they're going to go into more like tactics usually. So for me, I'm teaching people either organic marketing or I'm teaching people how to use VAs for different things, different actionable stuff that their audience can actually implement instead of you just talking about you the entire time. And then at the end, everyone has their creative thing. I mean, I got asked to sing on one podcast. They asked like what your favorite color is. Like some people take it a little bit too far, but it's usually not anything that you can't handle.
Okay. So follow-up question to that. You're a serial podcaster, so this may not, or it may actually pertain to you. But if say we're doing 1 or 2 podcasts a month, how are you tracking? Are you setting up separate landing pages, all that kind of stuff to track what you're getting from these podcasts?
Yeah, great question. So I personally don't do that only because I have like a lot of traffic coming from me in different directions. And to me, I have like my lead magnets that I know work very well. And I want everything going to my main page, but that's just me. I do know like Jeff Hunter, who's a good buddy of mine, for every single podcast he's on, he has like a separate website set up for them, separate lead page, like separate lead magnet. And he actually customizes the lead magnet per podcast. So he'll do a little research on what that audience is and what they would like. That's not something I've ever done. To me, that just get a little bit crazy if I'm doing a podcast every single day. And for me, it's also a little bit more about brand awareness as well. I mean, people know when people think of VA, they think of like me and 3 or 4 other people usually. And that's because I've been on a lot of podcasts and very similar to what you want. I think you care a little bit more about brand awareness and getting people to check out your site and stuff like that. But if you want to track it, you of course can do that. It's just a little extra effort on your side. And you might want to play around with going on podcasts a little bit before you actually end up doing it.
Awesome. I just want to hear Michael Palacci sing on a podcast sometime.
I was talking to someone, like, no one cares about any of that stuff.
If you go on TikTok, you'll see me dance.
Yeah.
Like, no one cares, like, what Nathan Hirsch's favorite color is. Like, that's total nonsense. Like, people care about the actionable stuff, and the good podcasts, as you get on them, 99.9% of the questions are going to be about your business, your story, your failures, your lessons, your tactics.
Absolutely. I agree. You know, the most interesting ending to podcast for me is when the host asks the guests, what books have you read recently? Or what's your favorite book? What had the most impact on you? That's my favorite ending to any podcast.
Yeah, that's a very common one. You should have like 3 or 4 books ready to go, especially if you go on a lot of podcasts, so that people will hear you on multiple times. I've been at conferences where like, oh, I heard you on like 4 different podcasts, and you don't want to say the same book on every single podcast.
I only read one book. It was 3 years ago, and I keep referencing it.
Well,
Right.
Maybe you do if you have an affiliate link for that book.
Right. That's the other thing. I mentioned affiliate links. Some podcast hosts do or don't. I like to give them, like, I'll throw it into Zoom because most podcasts are in Zoom nowadays. I'll just say, hey, here's how to become an affiliate. Like, up to you if you want to, but you can throw your affiliate link with the show notes. And some of my best affiliates have ended up being podcast hosts. So yeah, I always like to throw that option out there.
That's awesome.
I'm going to ask another question since nobody. Oh, Rich, were you asking something? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I had a quick one. I could wait too if you want.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, yep. This is Rich. Sorry, I was actually on, but my mic wasn't working before. So, this is a quick question. How important is it for the podcast to be live and unscripted? Like, can it be a scripted commercial, like where you know what everyone is going to say, and have it for the purposes of just promotion, or should it be live and unscripted and kind of fun?
Are you talking about having your own podcast, or are you talking about being a guest on other people's podcasts?
Somewhat both, but mainly when you have, like, if I have my own podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that depends on what your audience likes. I would say people now, maybe you could get away with that in the early days of podcasts. I think people are a little bit more skeptical of podcasts that are just one big sales pitch, one big pitch fest that don't provide actual content. Yeah, I mean, the truth is, like, I listen to a podcast called Stuff You Should Know, which is a very popular podcast. And I have no idea like how scripted or unscripted it is. They do a fantastic job. So I think you want it to come across as very authentic, and you don't want it to come across as a commercial or a sales pitch. But at the same time, like, the more preparation you do is only going to benefit you. My counter argument to that, which is kind of the same counter argument to everyone that's like, oh, whenever you pitch a podcast, you should have like a custom script and you should listen to like 3 of their episodes and break it down for them, is like, overall, sometimes quantity over quality has some benefit as long as the quality isn't like dirt poor. Like, if I still send someone a pretty solid sales pitch showing that I know what I'm talking about, that I've been on another podcast, even if it's not customized to them, that works a lot of the time. And all the time that I would spend like doing that research and writing the custom one, in my opinion, I could use that time better elsewhere. And maybe I miss out on a podcast here or there. And then you kind of have to weigh that, okay, if I did this live, which comes across very authentic, you're still, and you putting yourself in a position where you still have a pretty good show, is that better or worse? Or what's the added benefit of like spending hours and hours like scripting it and preparing it? And does that actually help you and hurt you? And that could be just my personal opinion as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have another one for you. You did mention Zoom, and I think you're right. A lot of the podcasts are going to be done on Zoom moving forward. You see my graphic behind me. It's kind of bad. I haven't fixed it yet. But what do you feel about having graphics or contact information or anything like that behind you when you're doing a podcast? Is it cheap? Is it a good idea? What do you think?
Yeah, good question. I don't do that. I see a lot of people with their name in the background. I would say having your contact information in the background is not industry standard. I think that might come across a little salesy. You could probably get away with it. The other important thing to keep in mind is 70% of the podcasts are audio only. And even out of the remaining ones, like, people mostly listen to just the audio too. So even if you do like a video recording, most people aren't watching the video. They're just listening to it.
One other question. How good is like YouTube Live and Twitch? I see a lot of content creators moving over to those streaming platforms. Like, I've seen a development Twitch channel. Do you see any trends going towards those platforms?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in either one. I'm probably not the best person there. For me, I'm always focused on like time allocation. So if you're going to commit to doing that, it has to be something you're really committed to doing it over and over. And you need to figure out how much time is this going to take me versus the ROI versus other things that I could be doing with that time. So that's always my mindset. But I'm not an expert at either of those things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let's talk about, if possible, your VA stuff a little bit, because I know that you kind of mentioned you hire out a lot of VAs, and through the experience I had with trying to hire VAs compared to freelancers is they're not very good at anything. It's like they kind of are good at very small things, and it's like, I don't know if my business, and they charge a lot. If you really look at it compared to the industry standard in design, for instance, a lot of the VAs are like, oh yeah, we're $55, $65. That's normal. And I'm like, not really, so how do you go about that? And then how do you go about getting those VAs? Let's say tomorrow I wanted to start outreaching to get onto podcasts. Like, how would you kind of set up that system?
Yeah. So first, let's define VA, because a lot of people, when they say VA, they're talking about like any single person that works remote online. I like to divide up hiring between followers, doers, and experts. So followers, that's what I consider VAs, $5 to $10 an hour, non-US. They're there to follow your system, your process. If you don't have a system, you don't have a process, they're not going to do it at a high level. They might have years of experience. Let's say I hire someone with podcast research experience, and I have a course called the Podcast Outreach Formula. It's my exact SOP that I use. I'm still going to give them my SOP to follow, even though they have experience, and they might do a different way, a different research method for Mike, for Brandon, for whatever. So that's followers. Doers are the freelancers, the video editors, the writers, the graphic designers. You're not teaching a graphic designer how to be a graphic designer, but they're not consulting with you either. They're there to do that one thing at a very high level. And then you got the experts, the high level freelancers, coaches, consultants, agencies. They could be $50 an hour. They could be $5,000 an hour, monthly retainer, whatever. They're bringing their own system, their own processes, their own strategy to the table. Just like you wouldn't hire a follower and say, I don't know how to run Facebook ads, go run my Facebook ads. You don't hire an expert that has had years of experience running Facebook ads his way and say, hey, I'm hiring you, but you're going to follow my directions and do it my way. So knowing those different levels are important. It sounds like you've had some bad experience with the VAs. I mean, my business Freeeup was entirely run by VAs, an 8-figure business, no office, no US employees, 35 VAs in the Philippines making between $5 and $10 an hour. Some of them up to 20 that were team leaders. That was just a few of them, running all day-to-day operations, from billing to social media to customer service to recruitment. So I know it can be done at a high level. It's kind of one of the reasons that once I sold Freeeup, people started reaching out and saying, hey, can you kind of teach me how to do it? And that's why we launched Outsource School, which I can talk about at the end. But almost always when people are like, oh, I had bad experience with VAs or VA suck or whatever, I like to break down hiring into interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing. And almost always it's a breakdown in the front end of that, the interviewing and the onboarding, and not having good systems and process in place to not only vet the VA and make sure they don't just have the skills, but they have the attitude and the communication that you need, which are both equal, all three are equally important, but then also onboarding them and making sure that you set the expectations so that they know exactly what you want and that they're going to back out then if they can't meet your expectations before you invest time, energy, and money into them. Keeping in mind that like a VA that works for one client, their idea of success and failure might be totally different than mine. It also sounds like you might be hiring the wrong levels in there too, which is a common thing. If people are hiring like the followers to do doer tasks or trying to hire a doer and get them to be a follower and stuff like that. And the way that you vet and the way that you work with each level is a little bit different as well.
Okay.
Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, no, definitely. I like that, the follower, because I think you're right. I think that's where my problem's always been at. And I think there's a hard mix there too, because I think that, seeing the difference in quality. I mean, I've hired plenty of designers that I've tried to push as doers, but their design just wasn't there. I feel like time management, they're either really good at what they do or they're really good at time management. I feel like that's the two things that I always battle when it comes to hiring. So
let's talk about the doers for a second, because I think I have a few tips that'll help you. First of all, so there's no such thing as on-call and urgent whenever you hire a VA or a freelancer. You either need to have a set schedule or you need to go to them and be like, hey, I have this task I need by this time. Can you do this? Can you hit that due date? Or you do what I do, which is I build up a Rolodex. I have 3 video editors. I'm filming courses. Whenever I'm done, I actually have one that I put in charge. I give it to him. If he can do it, great. If not, he'll see who's available from the other one. So they have other clients. I respect they have other clients, and I just need them to figure out who can get it done first, and I assign it to them. What a lot of people do wrong is they have a video editor who's idle, not doing anything. And then they're like, oh, I need this right now. I need this before the end of the day. And the video editors, unless they're brand new to being a VA or freelancer, are either are not going to agree to that or they're not going to be happy with that. So a better approach is to always go to them and be like, hey, I have this done. Let's agree, or I need this done. I need a due date. I'm going to do time for it. And only if you agree to that, then you have them execute it. Another better approach is to break the projects down into small chunks as possible, especially when you're working with someone for the first time. So I have a graphic designer I've used for 3 years. She's awesome. I know, I trust her. I get on the same page with her. But at the beginning, if I gave her a PDF of 10 pages, I would say, do page 1, show it to me. I'll give feedback. Show me that you can actually make adjustments to my feedback. If you do, then I'll give you 2 more pages. Then I'll give you 2 more pages. So that initial testing period is key when you're working with the doers, because there is a certain element of personal preference, right? Like I could give with Freeeup, I could give the same designer to 10 clients. 9 of them would love them, and 1 person would be like, "This is the worst designer I've ever seen." Like there's just that element of that. So you need to break it down into smaller pieces up front, and then work on building your Rolodex of doers so that you have 2 or 3 videos editors in your back pocket, 2 or 3 graphic designers, 2 or 3 writers, whatever it is, and be able to go to them whenever you need stuff, but not on call urgent.
Okay. That's good, because I think that you're right. I think I separate the doers and the followers, but I think I also mix the doers and the experts, because there's plenty of times when I'll get someone that, or the doers just think they're experts and they're not. And they'll be like, oh no, our fees are $100 an hour, after they reach out to me for me to bring them clients. And I try to explain to them, hey, if I'm bringing you clients, I shouldn't be charging you. You shouldn't be charging me that kind of money because you're a freelancer. So I see what you're saying there. So yeah, that's some good advice. I appreciate it.
No problem. I do recommend my old company, Freeeup. I mean, I know the new owners, they're awesome. So if you're looking for like good VAs, good freelancers, good whatever, they're the people that I would go to, and they know me. So.
Hey, Nathan, while you're talking about Freeeup, just a quick question. Is there a sign-up fee?
Free to sign up, no minimums. You can hire someone for an hour a month, 5 hours a week, full time.
That's great, because a lot of those companies, they charge like a $400 onboarding fee, and then you finally get to a VA, and it's ridiculous. So you guys don't do that at Freeeup?
Yeah, it's not you guys anymore. It's not my company anymore. Well, but yes, they don't do that.
Good. I took a look at Outsource School. So in the VA, cracking the VA code 1.0, I see the purchase price pretty steep, but that's okay. What can you expect in that? How is that going to help me? What's my ROI going to be on that?
Yeah, sure. So when we first sold Freeeup, like I mentioned, people reached out and said, hey, can you teach us your exact system and process for interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing? So we really spent a good 90 days putting our heart and soul into cracking the VA code, and we really broke it down. So for the interview section, you get our exact interview questions that we ask VAs, that we ask freelancers. We have us interviewing 4 different VAs, good and bad, and pointing out what's good, what's bad. On the back end, we onboard them. So our SICK method, which is getting on the same page with schedule, issues, communication, and culture. You get a cheat sheet on the exact questions we ask on how to onboard them and how to get them to back out early on if they're not a fit, which saves you a lot of time. Then we take those same 4 VAs and we onboard them. So you can see what that looks like. For training, we go over how to create really good SOPs, how to value your time at the highest possible level. We call it our SSS method, which is share, study, show. And then the management section is really in depth. It's everything from the template of how we run meetings with VAs to how we do bonus and raises with virtual assistants to how we promote team leaders and assistant team leaders so you don't find yourself with 15 VAs all reporting to you, which gets a little crazy. We go into handling issues, how to fire a VA properly. So all of that is the fundamentals and the basics. And what we've done is if you buy that, which yes, it's $997, you get a year access to Outsource School. So you get every other course that we come out with for the next year. And all those courses are around operations and marketing. So we talked about podcast. We have the podcast outreach formula. It's the exact SOP, the playbook that we use to have a VA do research for us. your VA can even take that course. So it's all about valuing your time. You also get access to our Facebook group, which is all entrepreneurs that are scaling their business with VAs, and you get a year of support along the way. So if you run into any issues, we're there to help you, whether it's issues on the module or you're interviewing someone and you don't know if what they said is good and bad, or you're running into issues with your VA later, we're there to support you. So you get cracking the VA code and a year of outsourced school.
So if I buy the podcast outreach formula, I get the VA school for free?
If you buy the podcast outreach formula, you just get the podcast outreach formula.
If you buy the cracking the VA code, though, you get the whole
shebang.
Right. And I had hold on.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's not that expensive. It's only $1,000. It's not bad.
Just money.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw in a coupon for 10% off if any of you guys want it. It's terrific 10.
So Nathan, I got a question. So the people who bought Freeeup from you, you're still good in contact with them. I noticed that after you probably sold to them, you went from 5,000 visitors organically per month to just over 100 visitors per month to that site. Do you think they might could use some SEO help?
They changed the domain. Are you looking at the old domain, the Freeeup with 3 E's?
Yeah.
They changed it to freeup.net with 2 E's.
Marty, do you know who bought Freeeup?
No.
The Hoth.
The Hoth. They're an SEO company.
Oh, so they do need SEO help then. Okay.
Oh.
Are you checking the right domain, though? I would check their new domain.
I haven't checked their new domain. No, I was just seeing. Yeah, I was looking at your old domain.
The Hoth bought it? Really?
Yep. Must say a lot about how secure I feel about you guys and staying with us, not all of a sudden just offboard into the Hoth real quick.
I never hold any secrets. I've told you before that I've looked at other companies and, I've looked at the Hoth too. They sent me a pitch and I was on the phone with them, and it doesn't add up to what you guys do. It just doesn't.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's a good compliment, Mike.
Thank you. Nathan's fine. He's like, hey, they bought it. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, we partner with them. Like, I still get all my VAs and freelancers from Freeeup. I've never bought any Hoth service or anything. And we send all our clients there, and they've been taking really good care of them. The second they stop taking care of our members, we'll stop using Freeeup. But so far, it's been great.
And that's interesting you say that, because that's always been my struggle with hiring, because that was going to be one of my first real hires, was going to be someone in digital marketing / SEO. And I'm like, why would an SEO want to get paid full time? If he's in SEO, he's good enough to bring traffic to the site and make sales. So it's always been a struggle for me to be like, how am I going to hire someone in SEO? Because if they're good, why would they need a full-time job?
Yeah, that's a huge misconception. I always cringe when people are like, oh, like if the VA was so good, he'd just like run his own business. But most people don't want to be entrepreneurs. Like most people just don't want that. It's a totally different mindset. And although like freelancers are business owners and all that, it's completely different when you're dealing with a company and a brand. And yeah, I would encourage you to kind of change your mentality there. There's a lot of good VAs and freelancers that have no interest in starting their own business that are very good at what they do.
I get it with other fields. It was just SEO was the one that I was like, that one just seems a little bit hard to hire.
Well,
and because of Black Hat SEO and all that stuff, I always just
Black Hat you have to be aware of. Yeah.
Obviously, Zach, we've got lots of SEO consultants that work here, right? And they're not interested in running their own thing. But they're perfectly happy having employment with that company and servicing our white label partners and, doing all that work, but they're not looking at, all right, let me launch something. I get it, with that entrepreneur mindset of like, why wouldn't you just do it yourself? You have the talent. But there's also a lot more that comes with that people.
As the one non-entrepreneur person here, some people just don't want the headaches and the struggles of owning their own business and trying to manage that part of it. I can be really good at SEO, but doing my own business and running it, may not have any interest in doing so.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree, Zach, because, guys like us, Zach, we're unemployable, plain and simple.
I couldn't go back to a day job, that's for sure.
Exactly, but there's people like my brother I've always tried to start companies with him, contracting companies. He doesn't want any part of it. He just wants to go out, be behind the desk, do his estimates, do his project management, and he's happy. There's just some people
Makes
just
sense. Makes
you know.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is when you're a freelancer and it's just you and you don't have a team underneath you, you almost have to decide how you split your time between getting clients. So like your own SEO, your own marketing, and actually doing the work and billing, which pays the bills, which is why a lot of those places use the Freeups, the Upworks and stuff of the world, because yeah, they could spend all their effort on client acquisition and stuff, but then they're not really billing hours. So it's kind of a tough spot for them unless they kind of grow up to be an agency and focus on both sides.
All right, I just signed up for your VA your VA calculator. Bam, you have someone else in your funnel now.
Appreciate it.
He's expecting you to add the course to cart and check out. That's what he's really looking.
I will. I'll look at it over time. I'm actually at the point right now where I was looking at starting to hire full-time employees, because I was, at that point with everything going on, I kind of held it off a little bit, but. Like for instance, social media management's hard because you have designers and you have to write content. I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to find a designer that I'm like, hey, you need to push this out. You need to work 40 hours a week, So it's definitely been a struggle for me because I'm at that gap period that I don't know who to really hire full time besides my full time writer that I have right now, which is kind of a VA because she's, I did something similar to get her, but we can always talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to schedule a follow-up call with me, I'm pretty easy to contact. And I mean, the other thing I'll add in, if you do end up buying it now or in the future and you don't like it or you don't get value on it, like I'm just going to refund you. I don't really have any interest in stealing your money. That's not really how I do business.
I feel you. That's been my struggle with doing YouTube videos is I want to be my best to bring value to clients and not be a fake guru. It's kind of hard separating yourself from that.
Right.
I feel you on that one.
Did we interrupt your flow, Nathan? Was there anything
Yeah, keep going.
planning on?
No, I think that was it. I think I covered pretty much everything.
Well, then let me ask one more because I was kind of taking some notes there. You had brought up kind of towards number 6 is working with influencers. You want to talk about your experience with working with influencers, how you built that relationship, how you continue that relationship, what's your experience there?
Yeah. It's funny. You guys know Ezra Firestone?
Ezra
yes,
Firestone.
no?
Nope, not me.
All right, never mind. This story doesn't apply then. None of you guys know who Ezra Firestone is?
It sounds familiar.
I was so pumped up. Ezra gave me a shout out on Facebook like yesterday, and he's like a really big player, but he's also like ignored me. Like he's never hopped on the phone with me. So influencers are like super weird. But for me, it's all about like just connecting with them. I pretty much try to set up networking calls with them and then doing follow up. I also like to show them anyone in my community that has been like a member of theirs or a client of theirs. So there was this big podcast by Scott Volker called The Amazing Seller. He's a really big influencer in the Amazon space, although he's trying to change his brand. And he just flat out rejected me over and over and over. The key is you don't get angry. You don't get aggressive. You schedule consistent follow-ups like months and months later. And I got creative with it. I sent him a video via email being like, hey, this is why I think you would be a fit. I found people that were in his Facebook group that were also clients of Freeeup. I got them to write me a testimonial, and I sent them an email being like, hey, your community is already loving and using my service. Like, it would be awesome if we could do a podcast together. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a big numbers game. Some influencers are nice, some of them are assholes. It's just kind of the way it is. But a lot of times if you stay consistent and you're putting out the content and you're connecting with them, and my personal favorite is I like to connect with all the people around the influencer. So if the influencer's rejecting me, I'll find all their like business partners, all the people they do business with, and network with all of them. So it's just a matter of time until I find my way into the influencer. People at least know who you are. Like I had Ezra, who you guys don't even know who is, like come up to me at a conference. He's like, hey, I know who you are. Like you're Nathan Hirsch, but I've asked him to hop on the phone with me like 4 times and he's never done it. But the other day, someone asked, like, who do I go to for learning how to VAs? And he tagged me in a Facebook post. And it was kind of like, hey, all that effort was kind of like worth it because I got some leads off of that. So, and other times, like the Amazon guy, he's had me on like 3 podcasts since then. So it is a numbers game. It's all about consistency. Everything I talked about, I don't spend like 8 hours a day going on podcasts or 8 hours a day doing networking calls or anything like that. I reach out to 3 new people. I go on 1 podcast a day. I write all my content at the beginning of the week. It takes me 5 minutes a day to copy paste it 3 times a day in there. Like, it's all setting it up. So the VA does 90% of it. I show up and I do the last 10, and I do that last 10% in a short period of time every single day. And over time, that adds up to a lot of stuff. If that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. Awesome, man.
Nice.
You guys should know Ezra Firestone is if you guys are in the digital marketing.
All right, now I'm gonna go look for it.
Of all the people, I expected Michael Palacci to know him because he's constantly name dropping people, and I'm like, yep, I'm glad you know that guy.
I don't know him. I bet you I'm following him on Twitter. Let me see.
You guys know who
Damn.
Roland? You guys know who Roland Frazier is from Digital Marketer? No.
Also sounds familiar. I'm a horrible
Oh
name.
wait, Roland. Yeah, I took his content marketing course.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to get on his podcast. I've been following up with him for like a year and a half, and he said that he'll have me on at the end of the month. So we'll see if that happens. But sometimes it just takes a lot of follow-up, and you stay nice. You don't get aggressive. You don't get pushy. You kind of understand they're busy. You try some different things, and over time, like you're as you are doing all these things, like you're going on podcasts, you're building partnerships, like your name is going to come across their desk as well. So it all kind of goes together.
That's a good follow-up question. How frequent is your follow-up, so as to not like be overly aggressive and, a turn off?
Pretty infrequent. I try not to be pushy at all. Well, the other thing I'll do is whenever someone says like, oh, like too busy right now, whatever, I'll just shoot an email to my VA or send her a message on my phone and just be like, set a follow-up for 3 months, 4 months. And I don't really have like a rhyme or reason for it, whatever feels good in that particular sense. But then she'll just add it to my calendar and I'll wake up and I'll say, follow up with this person, and I'll quickly send them a message and move on with my day.
So it's really just outreach, and you just basically say, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast in very simple terms.
Yeah, it's all different. We give you a lot of templates in the podcast outreach formula, but you can be like, hey, would love to be on your podcast. It's a little bit more direct. Sometimes works. Other times I'll go with the networking call approach, like, hey, would love to connect. I own Outsource School, and see what they say to that. Then you can, there's follow-up on the same channel, but then there's also follow-up on different channels. You might message someone on Facebook and they don't check Facebook messages. So you follow up with them on Instagram. So there's kind of different ways to go about it there too.
So your $1,000, that's just for the VA course, right? To learn how to work your VAs. And so where does the podcast outreach stuff come into play? Is that a different course altogether?
No, it's included in the year membership. So if you buy Cracking the VA Code, you own Cracking the VA Code and every future version of that. And that's the fundamentals. You need the fundamentals. Like if you take the podcast course, maybe you can pull it off. But if you don't know the fundamentals, it's going to be a lot harder. But once you get the fundamentals of interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing, which applies no matter what you hire a VA for, then you get a year access to every other course, every other playbook, every other SOP that we come out with that you can implement in your business using the fundamentals, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Which I'll kind of just say real quick, guys. I purchased the course and the year membership, and I've started just watching the podcast outreach formula, and is really good content, well worth the investment. I would highly recommend it.
Appreciate that. I'll send you guys some sample videos too if you want.
Honestly, if you think about how much it takes just to post a job posting on Glassdoor, it's like $250 for one platform. You're already saving money without, having to go out there and try to find someone. You're going to spend way more money going find someone local than going through your course. So I could see where the value comes in for sure already with the price.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I have to do another webinar thing.
Okay.
Thanks, Nathan. Hey, that was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if you guys have follow-up questions, like feel free to connect with me on social media or whatever. Reach out to me, whatever is easiest, or go through Mike.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
No problem. See you guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Mike, that was great.
Excellent. I'm glad you guys got a lot from that. If you guys want an introduction to Nathan, actually, I'll just paste his email in the here. So it's going to be in the Zoom. There you go. Oh, shoot. To everyone. There we go. All right.
There we go.
There you go. That's his email. Feel free to email if you want. Yeah, so Nathan and I are actually in a mastermind together along with Brandon and another guy, James Smith, who you guys saw him present. So yeah, really good guy. Definitely high quality content. If you're not, friends with him on Facebook or anything like that, I think he's kind of towards that 5,000 limit, but yeah, he pushes out really good content.
What do you mean he's close to the $5,000 range?
No. Sorry, did I say dollar? I meant 5,000 friend limit on Facebook.
Oh.
Yeah. So
They have a limit. I don't know how I don't know that. They have a 5,000 limit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because then you have to stop following. You can't friend anymore.
It's not,
Oh, wow.
and it's not a hard 5,000. It starts giving you issues when you approach 5,000. So it's like a regular, depending on the person. It's weird.
That is weird.
Hmm.
Well, Instagram it is then.
There you go.
Mike, are we meeting next week?
We are. Let me see. We're meeting next week. In fact, let me end the recording real quick.
No,
Yeah.
next week is the last meeting.